most common methods of satin stitch, which are the basic satin stitch and then the surface satin stitch. And I use these a lot for things like making a doll face, like you can see in this. I'm designing an eye here. That's a piece of felt. And then I just use the satin stitch to attach the felt to the doll's face. And then I also use the satin stitch to sort of draw the eye and the lashes and the brow around it. And that's what you use the satin stitch for, it's kind of like a paint tool. It helps you paint around with your threads. So to make this simple, I'm going to use a pretty thick piece of embroidery floss. It's kind of a hot pink color over the top of this burlap to make it real easy for you to see how this is done. So with satin stitch, let's say I wanted to draw a straight line with my threads. There's a couple ways to do it. This is the basic satin stitch. Starting at the back, you want to put your knot in the back. Okay, and then you just go down. And then what you're going to do is you're going to poke your needle through right next to where it used to be, where it was the time before. Right between the threads next to it. And you do kind of have to play with it like you see me there. I'm messing with it to get the feel for where it is. So this is just a back and forth satin stitch. And again, this is much larger than what I would normally do. If I was, say, doing eyelashes for a little doll, I'd want to use a really narrow stitch. Okay, now I'm going to speed up the camera a little so you can see it go faster. Finish several swatches of the satin stitch. Now I'm going to show you how to tie your knot in the back. And this is what it's going to look like in the back. It actually looks a lot like it does in the front. But you want to make sure that you pick your back, which is where this knot is. And you're going to go down to the end where your thread comes out. And just, I would say, just put your needle through maybe 2 of those threads. And then as your loop comes around, you're going to bring your needle back around to the other side of the loop and pull it through and pull it tight. You want to make sure that you don't have it too tight. You don't want it to like wrinkle on the other side, but it doesn't hurt to do this a couple of times to create a nice knot in your thread. I just use the thread to anchor my knot. To cut it. Showing you how to do the basic satin stitch, which is kind of bumpy. It sticks out a little bit. If you want your satin stitch to not be quite as lumpy, the other method is something called the satin stitch that's a surface stitch. So again, you bring your needle behind and you poke it through, and I'm going to use green this time, pretty close to any other stitches you've done, okay? And so, so again, this is the surface stitch, and now we're going to, again, bring the needle in really close to the other stitches, but instead of going back up to the top, up here, we're going to come down here and just be like really close in threads to where we left off. So in terms of threads, I mean the thread of the fabric that you're using is right next to the thread that has a stitch already in it. So the downside to this is that if you accidentally poke your needle through the exact same hole, you're gonna bring your thread back through. So I don't especially like this one, but it does have the pleasant after effect of not being quite as bumpy. So if you don't want your thread to kind of stick out as far as this type of a satin stitch, then the surface satin stitch is a nice alternative. It's also great when you're running out of embroidery floss. Okay, now I'm going to go back to the speed it up method so you can kind of see me work this stitch as well.